Danielle, did you get a new background, or is that a new location?
It's just a new background. I wish I had this in my house.
It works. It's working well. You know how these backgrounds, your hair and
Yeah.
half your head goes away, but it's not doing that.
No, and I noticed that actually. So since like it's so funny that you mentioned that. I have my hair up, obviously, but when I wear my hair down, it does blend in with the background. Like you can see my hands kind of disappearing a little bit.
Right.
So it's so funny. I'm like, oh, my hair doesn't actually disappear this time.
Well, I don't have a lot of hair left, so I can't have a lot of it disappear,
Yeah, exactly. All right. We are at 5:30. Welcome, everybody. Oh, my goodness. I'm assuming that's a virtual background, Carly. Oh, she froze. All right. So with member crews no longer being with the Community Advisory Board, we don't have a facilitator for this meeting anymore. And so I would like to open it up for one of you to facilitate this meeting, please. That would be amazing. And I'm not sure what's going on with Carly. She may have froze. Let's give us 1 minute here while we figure this out. She may have to sign out. Oh, there we go. Okay. Cherie, would you be able to facilitate this one for us? Pretty please.
Sure. Okay, okay. Looks like, okay.
There's Carly. You're on mute.
I think my internet got disconnected there.
Oh, I was just saying I love your background.
Yes.
That's amazing. Okay, Cherie.
Yeah, so I just went to go pull up my email here. I don't have the agenda in front of me. So let me.
I looked for it as well and didn't see it in the
invite.
Oh, okay. Let me just send it out to you guys real quick. Sorry about that. And then we will get going. Come in and Carly. Excuse me. Okay. Ugh, so many cabs. Cab. Expertise agenda. And I'll also send you the minutes as well. Here we go. Okay. On its way to you right now. And hopefully that comes through. Sorry about that.
Oh, biggie.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to try to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time here.
Thanks.
Okay. This might, okay. So I will call us to order, and if I can get this agenda to pop out for me, I can get us facilitated here. So let's see here. Let's call us to order, and Danielle, can you do roll call?
Sure, I have all members of the subcommittee present this evening.
Okay. And we can now go to item number 2, which is the approval of the January 6th minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, and hold on 1 second. I think everyone who was in the minutes was here last meeting, which makes it easy. All right, so let's see here. Public comment.
There are no hands raised for public comment.
Just so that I'm clear, you guys are cool with the minutes? We can approve them?
Yes. So,
Thanks.
all right. Okay. And in the process, you know what? Hold on a second. I got it. Clearly, I just need to grab another device here and make this work that way so I can see the agenda and not have to bounce back and forth between the two screens.
It's hard when you don't have multiple
screen.
screens. Or split screens. I know. I miss my split screens at work.
That's exactly right. I'm on a laptop that's propped up on a birdhouse in my office. So I'm like, all right, let me do this with my phone so I can see the agenda in
This
front.
is your indoor office, because it seems like normally you're out with your bikes.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, no, I had my back. Yeah, I had Biketopia going, but when it dips down to 34 degrees, not so much. All those romantic notions of, having meetings with all my bikes in the background go out the window. All right.
We
So now
know your affiliation with your bikes. You should look for a background with something with bikes and do it on a virtual upload.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe the Tour de France, maybe, a string of 50 people behind you and a police
right. I'm like pedaling.
out front.
That would be amazing.
Oh no. And therefore we digress. All right. So now at the approval of the minutes, we can go to item number 3, public comment.
I think we already did public comment.
We did it for item number 2.
No hands raised for public comment.
Thank you so much. All right, we can now go on to regularly scheduled items. Item number 4, 4.1, next steps for a mentorship program.
Yes. So I know we didn't get to talk about the program and kind of the just the basics that we outlined last month. We didn't get to go over that with the CAB, but I'm thinking, maybe we could just set up like a trial run with some of our new members and just get it going. And then as we get more new members on board, I still haven't heard anything from the city clerk's office as to additional new appointments. So as those eventually come on board, then we can add more mentors to the mix. But I want to keep this moving and not have it stalled again, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Danielle, can you remind me who our new members are? And I know they got sworn in, but if you could just remind.
Sure. Jorge Inocencio, he is our Southwest Santa Rosa representative. And then we have Manny Baldenegro, who is an at-large member. Jorge is Council Member Fleming's appointment, and Manny is Council Member Tibbetts' appointee.
So Eddie Alvarez doesn't have somebody yet? I know he had somebody and that didn't work out, or?
Not yet, and I believe Councilmember Alvarez currently, until they switch things around, he actually has the downtown area up for appointment. And so if you have a relationship already with him, I would encourage you to reach out and say, hey, I'm currently filling that spot and need to be reappointed and I'd like to stay.
Okay.
So,
I will do that.
Yeah. Or, if he for some reason has somebody else in mind, you could also say, I'm happy to fill that at-large position too. But, if he doesn't, it'd be great if you could stay in as the downtown area person.
Yeah, I'll definitely talk to him.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we have those 2 new members, and then we should have at least 4 additional new members, possibly 6, and that's only if Member Foster and Member Devine don't get reappointed. But we're trying to figure that out. I don't know what's taking so long at this point. I know they're all busy, but we'd like to get our boards and commissions filled up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that new council members, that's kind of the first order of business, and
Yeah.
it kind of hits you with, yay, you got elected, and now you have your committee, your committees that you're assigned to.
Yeah.
Council goal session, and by the way, you have, 20 appointments to make, and it all happens in January. Pretty much. So I think that's just kind of the challenge with all the council. And then too, if anybody wants to step down, so with Member Cruz wanting to step down, that creates, that's one less, and that's the other part too, is that the other thing is I feel like the city's appointment or the boards and commissions session that they did, was that in October, that they do that annual letting people know in the city about boards and commissions. And I want to say it happened in the fall.
It did.
And it's one of those that might be on a timely matter, having that in January to help with the council members who are trying to fill slots.
Yep.
So going forward with this, we have 2 brand new members that have come on. And then, but this is also, doesn't mean have a challenge, because I look, like prime example, Leslie has been on the board for a year, but she comes to the table with all these higher skills, right? So, as far as criteria go, she could be a mentor to any new board member as far as, her expertise on community outreach and, what the CAB does. And this, we've been virtual her entire appointment, but I think she could mentor easily.
I agree with you that she does come with a lot of knowledge about the city workings, and she's very active in participating in various meetings. But in terms of her knowledge of CAB and the strategic plan and the charter, not that she couldn't acquire that very quickly by doing some reading. I don't know if she has, and sometimes I think support on that foundational level of specifically CAB. I wonder if I hear what you're saying, that people come to us with different levels of knowledge and interaction with city government, but then there's CAB specific info that I'm wondering if could just benefit from a mentor 411. Even like what I met with you, Cherie. I sought you out to get, like, why is it this way? And why is it this way? And why don't we do this? And you're like, here's the history. Here's why it is the way it is. And here's the vision. And as soon as we had that conversation, I felt so much more settled. Just having those kind of things covered and connecting with you as well. So yeah, there is sort of a various level of incoming community activism, but CAB specific. Even if we run through those check boxes quickly, I still wonder if there's benefit to the relationship building as well. So I know we're in a situation where we may need Leslie to be a mentor because of our numbers right now. And I think she'd be awesome. But I also wonder if a lunch with you or a whatever virtual version of that is would also be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. So Vince and Cecile. I'm also thinking in terms of who was there when we went through the strategic planning process initially, who's still on the board. And Vince was there, Cecile was there.
You.
Right.
I
think that's it.
I think you're right.
I mean, because Jenny Lynn stepped down, Miles stepped down.
Well, even Tanya was still with us at that time.
Correct. Yeah.
So
yeah. So that's part of the challenge, is that, as far as folks that were there going through the strategic planning process. I think there's 3 board members that are currently on the CAB that were at the planning stages that went through that entire year with the consultant identifying. So that poses one slight challenge. Is I'm like, okay, but that's not the only criteria for mentorship and giving some.
The other person though that I can think of, because you're right, I just looked at the roster and it's just 3 of you. However, there is one other person, and that's Keith.
Yep.
And I say Keith because he worked at the city and has worked at the city for a very long time and is very knowledgeable about the CAB.
Yep.
So he actually might be a good one. I would say we can check in with Cecile, but I'm a little hesitant because it sounds like her current job is just so overwhelming that it's been really difficult for her to keep up with CAB stuff at this point. So I'm almost hesitant to say, hey, Cecile could be a good mentor for this first round.
Okay. And then there's the other half of it of folks that are coming on new. They want, there's the, takes 2 to tango. So we have to have that conversation at the next meeting of which new members would like the potential for a mentorship program and which CAB board members would be willing to be mentors. Because it's going to be at least an hour or more commitment a month, I would imagine, for scheduling time. Because I think when Carly and I met in 2019, we met 3 times, I think. Yeah. And yes, one of the meetings I think was about 2.5 hours. But that was because the restaurant that we picked was really slow. So Carly got a deep dive on the history of the community advisory board.
And it was great. It really was great.
It was great. And at the same time, it was just like, I have never had to wait this long for food, but it was delicious.
Yeah.
And then speaking of mentor mentee, Chris Rogers and Leslie and I think the 3 of us met in, I want to say February 2020. So like Leslie was appointed November of 2019, I think. And we either met, it wasn't too far into, so I used to meet with Chris on a more regular basis, just, because the downtown was convenient. But yeah, we met, I think it was either January or February of 2020 as we all met. And that's one of the things I found out when having lunch with Carly is that not all council members schedule check-in meetings. So Cecile is appointed by Tom Schwaham, and Tom does check in with his appointments. And when he, served as mayor, all of us as board chairs met with him monthly, and he was very adamant about, he wanted to give everybody an update on what the city was working on, what council goals, where they were in the process with council goals. And then he wanted all of us to report back on what our boards and commissions were doing and what they were doing in direct relationship to the council goals. And, it was kind of that tiered level. I mean, big surprise, the guy who was the former police chief was completely on the, like, these are the measurements, these are the targets, this is what we're working on. But it was a great opportunity to kind of see at the 35,000 foot level of what this, what the city's working on. I think it's interesting now we have Chris Rogers going kind of at that deep dive level every other Monday. So it's going to be, so we're getting another view of it of like, and now it's going to get expanded out to anyone who wants to know can get detailed questions and answers. So I think,
go ahead, finish what you're saying.
I think we can approach Vince, Keith. I mean, obviously I'm more than willing to participate. And then, Carly, where do you feel on this one? Because I feel like you come with, you've drafted all these documents. So I totally feel like you could mentor a new person on board.
Yeah, I feel like I'm relatively new compared to you, Vince and Cecile, but I've done such an academic dive into it that I I did a lot to learn quick. And
Mhm.
so I feel like I could provide mentorship, but I would want to allocate you three first, and then, and then also maybe on another level, because I think the mentorship is, like I said, it's knowledge and background, and it's also relationship building. So as you were talking, I was thinking ahead on how to, since everyone comes with different abilities or experience or exposure to the cab, having Danielle, who's looking at the applications or whatever background info you're looking at, like if maybe someone's coming to the cab that has, like, could be like a Leslie, maybe I would be a good person to match with someone like her who's got that, her type of experience, but could use some content focus. Whereas maybe someone who's kind of new to the whole thing could benefit from having Cherie be her mentor or his mentor. And so I'm thinking, as always, the solid backbone of any volunteer committee is to have Danielle make like a assertion of the incoming persons and doing the match and figuring, because I think if we take it up to a cab level, it's going to consume a lot of time that Danielle could probably just make in 60 seconds. Although one thing that, in the swearing in that we witnessed at our cab meeting last month, and thinking about this, we were talking about recognizing outgoing members for their contribution or volunteer service hours kind of thing. I kind of wondered if on the incoming ceremony, if that person could do a 5-minute intro of themselves right then and there, like, thank you for bringing me in, and I'm so and so. I come. Here's why I want to be here. Here, whatever they want to share, kind of at the why I'm here level. Then, because I know we have our get to know your cab members as an agenda item, but that could take 6 months with how busy our agendas are. And I think it would be really nice to, like Kevin, maybe I missed a meeting, but it's like, there's member Foster. And, I don't know much about you, and that's not a requirement to be here, but it's nice to kind of get to know. So I'm just wondering if we could add a 5-minute intro to the ceremonial swear in and let the person know so they can prepare something.
Yep.
And then that would, I think, also help when Danielle does the mentor assignment, help us all understand why it's going to me or Cherie or whatever. Like, it would just sort of put all our info out there a little more.
Yeah, if you had some sort of an outline, excuse me, that you could give a new member, these are kind of the things we'd like to know, and what your interests are, and then it would be a lot easier, I'm sure, for you, Carly, to say, yeah, I want that person, I can help them. And or even you could break it up. I'm thinking, if it takes 3 hours or 3 sessions, you might have certain information presented by you, Carly, and then maybe Cherie's doing something else, kind of introducing them to other aspects of the board, and and then they could get they could get to know more than one person initially, and kind of get a different perspective.
Kind of like an orientation team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is so strange for me. Like you said, you don't know me. I mean, here we are in a Zoom call once a month. it's so odd and foreign, I think, to all of us. I mean, maybe you're on Zoom calls all the time. I try to avoid them. You know, if I can, I'll meet people in person or, you know, whatever. I'm old school that way. But, you know, typically on boards, you know, you're in a room, you meet people and you do social things with them. I've served on American Diabetes Association in Orange County and up here. Got to know, I mean, we did things. We had fundraisers and, you know, people got really involved and you get to know each other. This
Mhm.
is a lot more difficult. I finally met Danielle in person, you know, and we never met.
Yeah.
And it's different and it's one-on-ones, great, but it's not, you know, you're coming into something new. It'd be nice if you know, you kind of have a meet and greet and hi, I'm Kevin, I'm so and so, you know, whatever. And then, yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Oh
But
yeah.
imagine any new board, especially if they have no experience with any of this, it's going to be like getting in a SpaceX and heading to the moon.
Hopefully landing at one,
Breathe. With that,
and hopefully getting to land.
yeah, and coming back. You're not
Hopefully
left
that rocket
behind.
lands safely.
Just real quick, Kevin has like a really amazing office as well. So you haven't seen my office yet. I know Cherie in the past has, and in the past Carly has, but so his is all decked out in sports memorabilia. It's pretty awesome. There's like giant stuff in there and golf stuff. It was really cool. One day when we're able to visit again, everyone will have to come see my office because that's like my big thing, right? Like I notice people's
Yep.
offices because I want them to be inviting. Like I want mine to be inviting and I want it to spark conversation. And mine is like a big toy factory. I have all of my Game of Thrones figurines everywhere. I have dragons and a bunch of different stuff. So
You have a lot of artwork too.
a lot of artwork. And so that's like the one thing that I noticed when I went into his office. It was like, ooh, sports stuff, right? Like I even like was like pointing out to like one of the photos he had up on the wall. I'm like, oh my God, look at that, you know? So that was really cool, right? That was like the first time that I actually got to meet you in person, but also get to know you a little bit more than just seeing you on screen. And
Right.
that, you know, that was awesome. And I missed that. I missed that with everyone. And so
Yeah, no, it's true.
I hope we can get there this year. I hope.
It's a goal. It's a great goal for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So for the February agenda, Danielle, the one thing I'm a little concerned about is I don't think subcommittee report outs is usually a default agenda item, but I
Yeah.
know that February has CIP, and there was one more, and I'm
Cab orientation.
cab orientation.
Yeah.
So, so time management wise, maybe, and I don't want to put this in your court, but maybe roping this into the cab orientation that the expertise subcommittee met.
Yeah.
We want to recommend a mentorship program and see if out of the orientation we can segment a little bit of time to give people the opportunity. But I'm with Carly on, you know, I think that myself and Vince, Keith for sure. I think Cecile would, I know she's got the new job she has is big. It's a big project, but I think this is something like I wouldn't want to not approach her about it because this is, you know, she is all about this interactive side of it. And she might have some tips and tools on how we do this virtually, because that's the one challenge. The one hesitation I have in all of this is how do you do a mentorship via a Zoom call, right? So she might have some tips and tricks on that, because I think it's something to give consideration to, because I think initially that's what's going to start out as, it's going to start out as either a phone call, email exchange, and then, you know, you can schedule something on a social distance level. But there's still going to be mask requirements. There's still going to, like, there's things that we have to be mindful of as board members, because we can't like we want to do this, but at the same time, we have to be extremely mindful of county health ordinance.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we have to behave at the highest standard, so that even if we are doing a mentorship meeting where we're just going and having a cup of coffee and we're 6 feet apart, we still have to follow all those protocols. Like that's, that is the man, right?
He's got his mask.
That's beautiful.
Exactly.
This is my black outfit too.
Nice.
It's just like, I like that the mask coordinates with the outfit. So yeah, to me, that's the side of it, is that I think it's great going forward with it, and we can start with a conversation at orientation, but I definitely.
Carly. How do you do that? That's amazing. I have no idea how that's done.
It's, if you go into your lower screen where it says mute or video, and you go
Yeah.
to the little action arrow and hit it, it'll bring up virtual backgrounds
Yeah.
or video filters, and it's under filters.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'll have to play around
And
with that later.
you can even go to the lower, once you're in video filters, you can go to Studio Effects Beta, and I picked some
These are
purple
amazing.
lipstick. So I don't know. So you can really, there you go. There,
Nice.
little Minnie Mouse.
Hold it. So where did you go? I'm all messed up here.
This
But
is amazing.
you go into video. I didn't see that one. Choose video background. Choose video filter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then background and filters, or
Then you can pick. So
It should show up when you click choose video filter.
yeah.
It should just show up there with little like icons that you can click on. I didn't know that. Look.
I picked a whole bunch of backgrounds because Zoom comes with some, but Danielle will appreciate this one.
I love.
Parks
Oh, I love that one.
Yep. Leslie Knope.
Yes.
And then I
That's
love
the one I
Brent.
think. Oh yeah, I love that.
And I
That's
did
the one
a
I need.
Hobbit.
I'm just chalking this up to team building at this point.
I'm sorry to diverge. Yes.
This is great. This is the most entertaining Zoom
And
call I've been on.
I don't like this one.
oh,
No,
there you go.
I
Patrick.
did throw this up, but then we lost. So
this one's
And
my
then
favorite.
it's like a good generic. I think I've put this one on here before.
I've seen that one for the CAB meeting. Yep.
Ooh, look at the Game of Thrones. I sent you the chair, didn't I?
Oh yeah, you did. Hold on. It's there.
The chair. Yes.
Now
See,
I'm on
that
the
was
phone.
not too bad. That's not distracting. It just, exemplifies your position.
I'm on my throne. It's
That's
fine.
right.
Oh, this is
See,
beautiful.
that's why I think we can get Cherie some bicycle ones. Anyway,
No. I liked Kevin's idea though of like having the cyclist behind her, like it looks like they're coming towards her. That'd be amazing.
Like Peloton or something's
Yeah.
got.
there you go.
You
There
could
you
probably
go.
make your own.
Oh yeah, I know. My boss has an assortment of bike themes. My major thing about backgrounds is you got to be so careful with how you position yourself, because
I know.
you can get erased into the background. And I will, since we're diverting from the team building exercise, my boss today has a green screen for her Zoom calls so she can formalize her backgrounds. And because we were meeting, she didn't have the green screen up behind her chair. She just kind of had it to the side of her desk. And the Zoom call created this ocean background into the green screen. So I get on the call and it looks like she has a portal to the left of her to this ocean, and it's moving.
Oh, no. That's
I'm
funny.
like, Eris, what are you doing in your office? You could literally be at the beach right now. It was priceless. It was absolutely priceless. So,
All right.
so I think we have an idea of what we want to do with this. So if you're willing, Danielle, rope it into the orientation.
Yep.
As a subject for us to discuss. And then that will be the February kind of goal and objective. And then let's just carry this on the timeline for the March meeting to
Sure.
kind of see where we're at. Because if we assign mentors and mentees in February, and if any of them are already on this committee, Exhibit A, Carly, Exhibit B, we'll have something to report back in on, hopefully, that, well, after the orientation, that there'll at least be some initial contact. And then beyond that, I think it's just, you know, deciding what kind of metrics we're going to qualify this as for success with mentors and mentees, and getting people critical information on this board that's been in existence for 20 years.
Wow.
Right.
We're coming up to that.
It's here, like 2021, because this came out of I believe it was 2000, or was it 2002?
It was 2002.
It was 2002. So yeah, so we're coming up on 20 years in 2022, which, you know, snap your fingers, it's going to be, you know, it'll be 2022.
No.
But yeah, and you know, that's a future discussion about, you know, the role of CAB for the next 20 years. All right, public comment on this item.
There are no hands raised for public comment.
Madeline's like, what are you guys doing?
I know, right? She's like, you're going through backgrounds, you put hats on, there's mustaches. I have to feel
part of
for
our mentoring, you know, and orientation, you know, we have to make sure
We're-
people understand.
yeah,
that
we're-
they have a
We're giving
background
an
and-
example.
Yeah, here's some choices for you. We've got
Well, I do love when I started on the McCab, my very first meeting, I said, so, you know, I had come from the neighborhood summit that they had, and I'm like, look, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
That was like my very first announcement to the group of like, this isn't fun, I'm not doing it. I'm all about block parties. I'm all about, you know, the fun side of this. You know, you have no idea that what you're going to dive into, but I do find it hilarious all these years later. That was one of our major goals, block parties. All right, at this time, let's go to item number 4.2, strategic plan, step 1, review and assessment of strategic category goals and objectives. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to hand this over to you, Danielle, to share screen, because I'm guessing you're going to pull this up.
There we go. Now I feel like I'm official again. Madeline, can I share? I should be able to. Oh,
Yes,
okay.
you should be able to share.
Thank you. Let me just find it here. Here it is. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Mhm.
Hang on just a second here.
Can you remind me when the strategic plan was finalized?
Strategic plan was finalized in December of 28. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was October of 2018. The CAB approved it in December of 2018. And then it went to council in August of 2019. And that was due to a change in leadership on our end. So it took us a while to get there. And so actually I'll go back to the beginning. So this is a little bit of an orientation for you. So back in 2018, the CAB started the process of putting together a strategic plan. They worked with Civic Makers, an organization out of San Francisco, to put it together. There were several steps, including the assessment data collection phase that happened. So that included interviews and focus groups with community groups, focus groups with internal staff, and then one-on-one interviews with CAB members and council members and the city manager. Based on that, then the consultant put together some workshops where the CAB developed its mission, vision, and strategic categories. and then additional workshops where they develop their one-year plans for implementation. And so this is where the mission, came from, was that process. I think in this particular activity, we're not going to look at redoing the mission or the vision. I think that we're still pretty much in alignment of, what the CAB developed back in 2018, but I just wanted to show it real briefly. The vision, I'm not going to read through because it's so long, but this is basically where the CAB wants to see themselves by 2023. These are things like, more people are engaged with the CAB. The CAB is more established in the community, providing resources, et cetera, to the community. So what I'm showing you here right now, sorry, there it goes. Oh, nope, it won't let me move my box over. What you see right here are the strategic categories that the CAB came up with. Those include empowerment, so that's the empowerment subcommittee, community engagement, expertise, and operations. So operations merged with the expertise subcommittee. And underneath each of these categories are the strategic priorities, which started off, sorry, I have to move it so I can see both you guys and my slides here. It started off these priorities under expertise as being developing best practices, conducting community meetings and community engagement, and improving communications. Operations started with increase awareness of the CAB and its tangible results, develop better collaboration among CAB members, qualify for more grant money. And so really these two groups, empowerment was more of the, and still is more of the external arm of the CAB, right? And then these two subcommittees being merged now are more of the internal arm of the CAB. I think the resource and I get resource technical assistance and board development, capacity building, I guess is what I'm trying to say, arm of the CAB. So if we go into the next slide, then we take our strategic priorities. Sorry, that's for empowerment. Let me get to expertise. So then we took our strategic priorities and we made objectives for each of these. So under learn best practices, conducting community meetings and community engagement, we've done a lot of this already. So assess CAB's strengths and weaknesses to identify training areas, create the ideal CAB member profile, add accomplishments to the agenda or recognition system. We started doing that. That's something we could probably do better. And then there were some training areas too that the group never got to. So train in various engagement formats with the ability to host meetings across Santa Rosa, train in listening, parliamentary procedure, public speaking, and presenting, and assess the community for strengths and weaknesses of leaders. So it's all under the learn best practices priority. Under improved communications, we have asked neighborhood leaders about their preferred communication styles and channels, communicate better with city council, identify communication tactics for each neighborhood, document tangible benefits of the CAB. One thing that we're working on, create onboarding, orientation, and mentor program documentation, and increase communication skill set. Let me run through what operations had, and I'm pretty sure most of these boxes are checked off before we get back to the expertise slide. So we did a lot of these already. So we solidified, and there's room for improvement, obviously, but we solidified the CAB's grant program process and voting metrics. This, I think, kind of got put off to the side, which was develop a robust outreach plan for the bicycle pedestrian. What is that?
It's a very targeted goal. And so it was literally about that meeting they were trying to get more.
Oh, right.
And so it was more of what's a tangible win that we get accomplished in 2018.
Then we did that. Mm-hmm. So And then improve CAB strategy for engagement within the CIP, which we did. We started using NeighborFest as a way to reach out to the community around the capital improvement program budget priorities. Yep. Develop better collaboration with and within the CAB. So we talked about, and I know that Carly, you weren't here prior to this, and then Kevin, you weren't here. The CAB meetings run way more efficiently right now than they had prior. It was like herding cats in previous meetings, and we've definitely made a lot of improvements. We've also been doing the get to know your CAB member item, creating a CAB list of assets on the board. You know, we're learning about these assets through these presentations during get to know your CAB item. I don't know if we've really developed a list or if that's even needed at this point, or if we even need it. Explore concept of CAB rapid response listening team. I actually don't remember that. I don't think we've gotten to that one yet. And then qualify for more grant money. We actually, for NeighborFest, oops, that's misspelled. For NeighborFest, we actually merged it with the CAB grant program, although looking at it this year, it might be a little bit different. Attend the Coro leadership training. So there is a particular organization that does leadership training. So it's just to fund the leadership training that the empowerment group is working on. And this right here, it says get 2 neighborhoods to silver. What that means is we were actually looking to develop a recognition program for neighborhoods. And we had a silver, gold, and bronze, silver, and gold. I even think a platinum category for that, but we never got to implementing that program because priorities shifted for our department. And we decided to focus more on NeighborFest at this point because our resources, we just don't have the staff to do a neighborhood recognition program at this point, unless the empowerment subcommittee wants to take that on and they have way too much on their plate. So with that, and then we use those objectives to develop the 1-year work plan. So I think we've gotten pretty far with this, you know, merging of both areas together, and then all of the objectives, gotten pretty far with this group. So I'm wondering, moving forward, at least for this year, yes.
Do you consider year 1 2019 or 2018?
I would say 2019, and then
council approved.
Yeah, we had already mentioned to council when we had gone to them for approval, hey, we've already started implementing all of these activities under our 1-year work plan. So the work is underway. What we really needed approval from them was to shift the community improvement grant funds to fund NeighborFest events.
Okay.
And just get their support for this, which we did. But we started to look early last year. If you remember, we were working with 2 SSU students on revising the plan and working on developing year 2 work plans. That did not happen, obviously, because of the pandemic. And now we're in a place where we're back, you know, or not back, we're still in shelter in place. So how do we move this work forward? It's a question I'm going to also put out to the empowerment subcommittee. Obviously, we still want to continue with the work that we have set up to do through the strategic plan because we spent a lot of time and money on it. However, does it make sense right now to focus on these areas, or do we need a couple of different objectives to add into this that makes sense for now, for this reality that we're living in, not being able to actually meet together, do events together. I'd like to get the grant program back up and running and focused on stuff that can actually happen in the community For example, one of our community leaders passed away last Friday, Carlos Del Pozo, and Vince was very close with him, and Vince is actually working on community recognition, some ceremonies to recognize him. But one of the ideas the Santa Rosa Health Action Chapter had was to install either a plaque or a memorial bench at Roseland Elementary in his honor. So I imagine that the CAB grant being able to fund projects like that right now, just because we cannot have people meeting for Neighbor Fest during this time. So I kind of like to think about, are there other things we can do besides the objectives listed here for right now? Or are there some objectives that you can see that we can focus on for the next year that already exist in this plan?
Can we see what, before we answer that, can you pop into year 2 just to see what we were anticipating we were going to do?
Sure. Hang on. Let me see here if I can find this really quick. iCloud. Okay, here we go. Yes. Perfect. Hang on just a second. I have so many screens open.
Danielle, did we ever get
Where are you?
anything back from the Sonoma State folks?
They weren't able to finish their project because of we left off like in the middle, but I did write something up. I'm just trying to pull it up here. Hold on. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Okay.
Little puppy.
No, is that you, Dad? Okay.
I had to mute my mic because he was crying at the door, and I'm like, so my husband took off to go to the record store and left the dog in the house with no human. So I'm like, hearing this dog, I'm like, that's probably getting picked up on the microphone. So I'm like, all right, better bring him in.
Okay. So this is something I presented, well, I don't even remember, sometime last summer when we reconvened. And this is kind of the outcomes of those workshops that we did right before the shelter in place order happened in March. And so we did an assessment of where we were at with each of our 1-year work plans. And so under the objective of assess CAB strengths and weaknesses and conduct trainings, completed. So we did explore the ideal CAB member and develop that. Created a survey to assess strengths, weaknesses, and assets, and then we also implemented that with that current CAB. We used what was it called? Wingfinder assessment through Red Bull, which is interesting. And the CAB members who were around at that time actually did go through that assessment. On the horizon, so those are things that are coming up or that the group at the time last March wanted to work on, defining training priorities, determine city departments or CAB members that are willing to help with trainings and incorporate into the onboarding process. Beginning of the road, so we haven't really made much progress. Create a list of city departments, which that already exists. So I'm not Sheree, you can jump in. I don't really remember what that was for. And there was nothing in the parking lot for this particular objective.
And I was on operations, so I can't answer the question about that particular one. I know that that could, because well, let's start off with, there was Xavier, Mike Varela, Cecile was on that committee. Veronica was on that committee. So I'm
and
trying
Miles
to think.
was too.
Miles, yep. I'm thinking maybe Jenny Lynn as well. So I
Is
think Cecile
update-
might know.
Is this update what you did, Danielle?
This is what the
As-
SSU students did.
Okay, so I was there for this.
I'm thinking that this was, there's an objective around inviting city departments to come present just about themselves, like what they do for the community. And I think that's what that was around.
Quick question. Part of what we're supposed to be doing is directing people to the proper area of the city government,
Yeah,
the various city departments. So this seems on the horizon, the beginning of the road, create the list of city departments and determine city departments or CAB members that can help with trainings, incorporating onboard. These things are pretty important. If we need a roadmap so that we can talk to our quote constituents about, hey, they're going, well, I want to know more about parking. I want to know more about this. So we need that information as CAB members, I would think.
Mhm.
Has that been done, did you say? Kind of,
I
I know
we
on
did.
the website it's there if you look for it, but
Well, if you look for it, but it's hard to find. So we actually did something back when we annexed Roseland into the city, and we sent out welcome packets, which included a magnet of just important numbers to have on hand, right? And I know we have a document somewhere where it lists some of that, but I think it needs to be updated. So it does
what to
exist.
do.
It just needs to be updated at this point.
yeah.
I remember where part of this came from. So in the previous CIG, community gardens was a popular grant application. And this, I believe, came from within the community grant application process. There was a group that I want to say wanted to build a community garden on an easement in a city park.
Okay.
And that turned into a multi-step process to even figure out feasibility of who and what and how and I think that's where this initial discussion came from, was in CIG. In that initial grant application, you had to have approval. And at the same time, it was also trying to figure out who actually owned the easement, because there was a question of whether or not it was owned by a school or whether it was owned by a park. And I think that is where this came out of the strategic planning process. One of those questions of like CAB members, how we can help folks, specifically it was around CIG. This was one of those instances because it took staff time and resource time to figure out even if the grant was feasible, because the grant application, because one of the things with the previous program and part of what we moved it over to with NeighborFest was that the grant application, there was a lot of times where we would have where specifically Danielle, you, in the process of reviewing the applications and the process of getting to the approval stage of the applications, you personally had to do the work of figuring out if it was eligible. And that was one of the arguments of when we moved it over to NeighborFest, because one of the major challenges was then when and this didn't even have to do with an approved grant. This had to do with the process of getting a grant submitted and then verifying that they qualified.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of where Expertise was challenged with knowing all the different city departments, because this is one of those areas that it wasn't easy. It was multiple departments and having to figure out who to talk to, who to get the permission from. It was involved. And if you throw a school district into the mix, it gets even more complicated.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay, so moving on real quick. Then we got to the orientation, onboarding, and mentoring objective. So on the horizon, include an exit survey, how to improve, processes for the CAB, onboarding materials. So halfway completed, address orientation, onboarding. I'm actually really excited because I'm seeing stuff that's being completed. Beginning of the road, create the mentor program. Hey, look at that. Finalize and publicize the mentor program. Well, although I don't know if we need to publicize the mentor program. And assign mentors with mentees.
Yeah.
Parking lot was clear. The objective around inviting government departments and council to come to CAB meetings.
We have
So-
that happen anyway.
We have it happen
And
anyway.
You know,
Yeah,
when they have their check off, they tell us about who they are.
yeah, exactly. And I think through the strategic planning process, council was added to that because there, I think are along the line somewhere, and there's some council members that are very involved in specific projects. So I think we had council member Schwedhelm at one point. Was it him? I think it was him. He came to talk about, oh my gosh, he came to talk about something and I'm totally blanking on what it was. But so I think it had to do with that. Again, you know, create a list of city departments. That's included in there. And again, the parking lot's clear. But you're right, Carly, that already happens. They already identify if they need to come to us or not.
I also wonder, not having been at the original conversation of city departments, but just thinking about why that would be on the list. It does, and especially thinking of one of the elements that we talked about for the mentor program is new members come with ideas and
Yeah.
reasons and possible agenda items of why they applied and joined the CAB. And I kind of feel like an easy list of departments and programs or whatever that was on there is, you know, just say that one of us came with a real hot button topic on city transit.
Yeah.
Well, the CAB is not the right, even though you think community engagement, it's not the right venue. And so list could be helpful to the mentor to be able to have just the link or whatever to say, hey, maybe this blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah. And I think also going back to why that ended up as an objective, I think part of it too was around education. And like, again, like this is what these departments do. And these are where some of the focus areas are for them currently.
I think we also kind of talked about an org chart.
Yeah.
Just to kind of help look at the relationships and the hierarchy.
Which is what the Empowerment Subcommittee is working on as part of their Civic 101 engagements video series. So yeah, that's being developed. So we're getting there on that one too. Moving on to CIG. So we kept the process of solidifying the process and the metrics at middle of the road because there's always room to improve, essentially. And so that's open. It's basically open-ended at this point. Create a list of board assets and present to one CAB member. So we completed presenting one CAB member. I mean, that's also ongoing as well. So I can add that in there. I liked your idea, Carly, of doing it when they're sworn in. I think that's a better way of going about doing that. That way we capture everyone coming in. And then publishing it on the website, social media. You guys have no idea, except for Shuri, how long that actually took. We've been wanting to do that for almost 5 years now since I got here. So we finally got all of the profiles and the photos up.
Could we also, as part of your checklist on an incoming member, kind of like, you know, like we have our required training every year. Like, could we kind of make hey, you're gonna have to give a little bio introduction. You have to get your picture and put that. Okay, that's
already on the that's on the checklist already.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me that I have that too. I should probably just put it into the orientation packet actually as one of the maybe like the last page or something. Okay. let's see here on the horizon, create a list of board assets. Again, I don't know if if the group actually wants to do that, if that's helpful.
I don't see that being helpful, Danielle, unless it's for a specific purpose. You know
The
what I mean?
purpose was for training purposes. So like, if we identify an area of training that the CAB would be interested in, then we'd be able to say, oh, so-and-so has that knowledge and can talk about that. But outside of that, I mean, if we're talking about trainings, I would rather get experts in, yeah.
Maybe, I mean, board asked, maybe we could sort of transition that into the mentor mentee asset concept, with what I bring to the table versus what Sheree brings to the table.
Yeah.
And looking at it from that perspective.
Okay. Everybody else cool with that? Yeah. Okay. Parking lot was clear on that one as well. So other notes, assign tasks to specific CAB members. So actually, Carly, I think this is yours. So when we do develop the next iteration of the work plans, add in specific category for specific CAB members, what their tasks will be. And I agree with that. I think that's really helpful to keep us all accountable and on track. Include CAB requirements in the charter in this folding that into the strategic plan. Review strategic plan for congruency before final publish. I think this all came from Carly, actually. I'm remembering this now.
I have to say that was a huge confusion to me, looking at the strategic plan and charter as two different things. And I feel like it needs to be one. So
yeah. And it's going back to the pandemic, it's been so hard to fulfill those charter requirements too. I think a lot of those charter requirements end up falling into the empowerment category, but as a whole board, it does impact everyone, because we still ask, like when we're not under pandemic conditions, then we ask everyone to table at a certain event or whatever. So let's see. So in general, in the parking lot was increase awareness of CAB and its tangible results, and qualify for more grant money. I think the qualifying for more grant money, that's really on city staff, unless members hear of something specific that they can then tell city staff about. I mean, that's really where I see that particular objective, because we're the ones who are going to have to apply for that on behalf of the CAB.
Right.
I still think that increasing awareness of the CAB is like big. There's still people who have no idea who the CAB is.
Well, as we're reviewing this, and thankful for Cinema State adopting us as a project, even though they weren't able to have it come to total fruition.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that since we're the internal arm, that the Expertise Committee take on the responsibility of looking at the strategic plan, year 1, et cetera, 2, 3, 4, 5, and because and looking at where we're at with the strategic plan, kind of coming up with, this is pretty easy. This took a couple of subcommittee meetings to accomplish the input, but I think there would be value in us looking at what the CAB has accomplished towards a strategic plan, and until it gets combined with the charter, and providing a report at a set month of the year, whether it's calendar or fiscal or however it seems to fit with other, like the council or other influences, that the Expertise then presents to the CAB. Hey, we've looked at the strategic plan. We've gotten input from all the committees on what we've done. Here's where we're at. here's where we might have room to acquire or adopt some new goals, depending on our bandwidth, our membership, our will, and kind of do like a, like, okay, we've taken it all in and let's go. But in that presentation of where we've gotten with our strategic plan, frame it in a way of accomplishments. And so that can be that tangible articulation of what we've done, even if it's not an actual product, and so I think then once we get sort of a polished piece, whether it's a paragraph or a page, and I would say no longer than a page, then we could put that on our website.
Yeah.
And then and we can send it to the council, and we can use it for talking points, and we can just add it to our sort of repertoire of history of what we've done and where we want to go.
Cool.
And I think, that would include all the presentations that we've heard, and we heard presentations from, the strategic planning people and and then we could have a section our public comment summary. We had a lot of input from the members of the public that represented the Human Rights Committee. And, we could kind of segment or categorize our subcommittee work, CIP, charter, relationship, and ultimately what I would like to see because this is one of the reasons why I wanted to join the CAB, is how are we advising city council? That still evades me with, as a body, how are we advising them? We can do it individually with our members, but I would like to see, and please, Cherie and Danielle, and even Kevin, tell me if I'm sort of off base, but how are we providing advisement to the council?
Mhm.
I would really like to know. And I think we are through its city staff and departments. It's not like we're not,
Right.
but I think articulating that is very important in a summary.
Yep.
Important to me. But I think it kind of, when you look at our profile, if you're exploring, hey, I want to do a volunteer position, what has the CAB done?
Yeah.
We do Neighbor Fest, and I love that too. So not to be forgotten, but I'm just thinking of this internal arm, as you say, that what Expertise provides.
I think that's a really great idea. I think this is the best place to do it, is with this subcommittee. Anybody else? Thoughts around this?
It's like the United Nations or any, agency. You've got ambassadors,
Mhm.
somebody representing CAB to the city council. I mean, who is that? Is it the chairperson? Is
Cherie.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. So Cherie, you speak essentially for CAB when you address the council at a council meeting, or how is it done?
Yeah, typically in in years past, the most that you would see me interacting with council is on agenda items towards CAB. So if CAB's strategic plan came forward, I would go forward as the chair to answer questions from council, and I would be up there with Danielle. Then beyond that, when I'm seen as a representative CAB is when I was on the board commission and chairs, and I would be reporting in on what CAB was working on to the mayor. in relationship to council goals. So those are the two areas where I would interface as a spokesperson for CAB. And I'm, but so as a body, how are we advising city council? So I think part of it is that this is the question around when different departments come to us and present. That's one of the things, right? Is that the question gets asked by council is, did you meet with the CAB or did you present to the CAB? And the other piece of this is that I know that, and this is one of those areas that's a larger discussion, because the planning commission is abundantly clear, right, in their role and as defined to the council. As in, you can't get your project through if it hasn't gone to the planning commission. Like, it goes to the planning commission before it goes to the council. And the planning commission has to give its stamp of approval. In other words, if it fails at the planning commission level, it does not, then it can be appealed onto the council, but it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's very clear, it's very defined. And I think that this is the larger question. If you go back to the mission and the vision statement, this question plays into that. And I will be perfectly honest, under the pandemic conditions, I don't know how we effectively answer this question right now, because the council is kind of every question or every item on the agenda right now with council has very specific limitations because it's in a virtual setting.
And it's changed too, because now we have district council members, right?
Correct.
So it might have been different prior to this year, and now it's going to change. So I think that we can talk about how the CAB advises council in this summary, but then also make recommendations moving forward, how it's going to advise council now that there are district representatives.
Yeah. And I mean, another interface for us was NeighborFest.
Yeah.
That council members, they were given the list of the neighborhoods and they were encouraged to attend at least one, if not more. And when NeighborFest was up and operating, we got their feedback on it, because it was about emergency preparedness and emergency response in the form of a block party. And council got to see that in action, as far as neighborhoods getting to interact and build documents for emergency response, get the information about the different departments and what would happen in the event of an emergency. So that was probably one of the most direct connects I could think of, was that piece of it. But yeah, it's a good question going. You're right, though, with district elections, it does change things dramatically. I'm just going to do a quick time check here. It's 6:45, and let me pull up my agenda here. So this is our only other piece for tonight's agenda, was going over the strategic plan. And from here, it's going to go, this is going to come up again in CAB. Not during the orientation, but
Sheree,
yeah.
may I pose some topics for parking lot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on what you just said. And I'm going to just roll through them in the interest of time, and knowing that maybe we can revisit them on different agendas. In terms of advising the council, you've often referenced the city council that has goals, and they let us know what their goals are. And my impression is there's sort of this mandate that we then adopt those goals, and that seems like a top-down directive or guidance. And I'd like to parking lot exploring that more in the hierarchy of top-down, and thinking of us as advisement and how we bring those two together. That could just be my individual understanding needed, but I'd like to talk about that. And number two, have you run that by the CAB concept that the council puts forth? And this has been a question that we had I think in 1 to 2 meetings prior of the question of now what? And we have not answered that yet. And I would love to entertain coming up with a template response to department presentations. They could be specially tailored, but if we had 3 to 5 prompts that the CAB said, okay, we heard it, this is what we think, we had question, whatever, just parking lot that. NeighborFest I love NeighborFest so much because it brings the community together in a informal way that we can then invite council members to. Like, I remember when Chris Corsi came to the Ridgeway district, I thought that was wonderful. Likewise, when you're giving your report out to the council, it sounds like twice a year, I think we should invite, as a reminder, because we're able to at all times, I think the CAB should attend those and hear it, because I think it would enrich our participation and increase our knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. But back to, so that's another parking lot. In terms of NeighborFest, I happen to be perusing the agenda for the February 9th City Council agenda. And that's where their staff reports coming forward on the PG&E settlement for the Tubbs fire. Great. But what I was thinking about was, I wonder how connected we should be on agenda items with the city council that pertain to disaster preparedness, since we've adopted NeighborFest as such a community building response mechanism to disasters. And to me, and I know that this was a lawsuit, so it's a little different, but on concepts and issues and projects that pertain to emergency response and NeighborFest, I'm just wondering if those should be things that are run by the CAB. Because it does, we are pulling into that community engagement. And I noticed on the staff report that it said none needed on committee inputs. Granted, it's a lawsuit, so I think that could be why that was I'm just assuming. So, and then you mentioned district council, the council's divided up into districts. And I don't remember exactly what you said, but if we could parking lot that to what you were saying in terms of, how we're interfacing with those council members and how we're interfacing with the council and the CAB as a whole. And I'm just parking lot them all because those are all things I want to talk about.
Okay.
But it is 6:52.
So I want to go back to this idea that you had around this summary or report out on the strategic plan, what we've accomplished, whether obviously that gets reported out to the larger CAB, but then taking it to city council. Is this something the rest of the subcommittee would like to do? I think it's an excellent idea. I just want to make sure that everyone's on board with this. And then maybe we can start talking about next steps. Maybe not at this meeting, obviously, but next meeting, like who's going to take on which pieces and what needs to be done to accomplish this report.
Yeah, I'm 100% because it, one, gives us a little bit of clarity of, well, we've achieved all these things, so we can take these out because they're done. And we can decide on, okay, now that this is done, what's the next step to it?
Yeah.
So I think that's, I think it's great. And then Carly, to answer your question about council goals, I'll email this out to the group, but it's at the beginning. So this is, I just checked, and the latest on here shows that crisis response through early 2021 is what's listed under the goals. So they have economic resiliency, including childcare, homelessness, public safety priorities and reform, organizational diversity, inclusion, equity, fiscal stability, funding, and services. So that's what's their the goals at the overall. And then tier 1 priorities for the council were climate change, housing and affordable housing, government and council reform. And but this all gets revisited really soon. And it's a public meeting that council has, and there's public comment opportunity for this entire city for people to give public comment on the council's goals and the goal sessions. And I don't know when those dates are. I want to say they were in January.
Or February 18th and 19th.
Yeah.
Thank you. But so just to give you a little heads up, Carly, of that, if this is something that you want to dive into on the early formation process, I will tell you right now, what's on the city's website will probably dramatically change now that we are in this pandemic paradigm. And so we will see some changes, although it's entirely possible that economic recovery and the child care, I can see a lot of these staying at the top of the tier, just because where we are right now. But it is where if there's going to be changes at any level, or if something is going to be getting introduced, that's when it's going to happen. And it can come from public input. It can come from the ground up, that if enough members of the community bring a particular issue and say that this needs to be the priority, whatever that particular issue is, it can get brought to the forefront and council can consider addressing it. So,
Are
but just
you
a heads
saying
up.
that we should, I mean, is that a venue for the CAB to present as a committee? Or
No, it's a member. No, the members of the public, the under
Okay.
public comment.
No,
In other words, if there's a
I
key issue,
I know.
The CAB could actually, and you know, this is coming up before the next CAB meeting, but the CAB could actually formulate its own letter for this to give to the council, as to the CAB would, based on like public comment received at CAB meetings over the last year or whatever it is, and issues of concern that we're hearing in the community, we feel that the council should focus on XYZ. So that's something that can be created. And we would have to, I mean, it could be something that the subcommittee creates.
Well, it seems to me that that could be something we entertain for 2022.
Yeah.
Because it's, from my understanding, Cherie's report outs are providing that recommendation.
Yeah.
I think. But I agree. I think parking lot agenda to, and maybe Cherie could explore it more at her level to see if the city council would appreciate that input at that level, and or just keep it the way it is and fortify what Cherie's report is with more information. Because I think it's important. I mean, depending on what's going on in the world, I think it's great to have a congenial relationship with the city council versus something that could be perceived as adversarial. And not that the goal setting session it invites that, but those are kind of like new things that come up that city council may not be aware of versus these already paved conduits of information, communication that we already have. We may not need to do that. Anyway, I think you've really captured just some parking lot ideas, and you know, providing that the chair invites it, I'd be willing to make a motion to adjourn the meeting if we're done with our agenda items.
Oh, 100%.
All right, so we have Carly and wants to second that,
Second?
Member Foster. Awesome.
All right. See you guys at the end of the month.
All
Y'all
right.
have a good evening.
Thank you, you
guys.
too.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks.